You can follow Ian Rapoport, the NFL Network insider, Ian Rapoport on Twitter at RapSheet. And Ian, kind enough to join us this morning. Good morning, Ian. Let me start with our poll question. Russell Wilson will be the quarterback of the Seahawks, Raiders, Cowboys, Bears, Saints at the start of next season.
I would say probably the Seahawks. I mean, it's not impossible. I think one thing we've learned in the NFL this year is that quarterback trades, massive quarterback trades, the kind that we used to scoff at years ago, they can happen. I mean, it's slowly becoming a little more like the NBA, where people aren't afraid to take on dead money. They're not afraid to make a splash or not afraid to take a risk. I mean, these things have now happened. So at least this conversation that we're having now is not fake. Whereas like 4 years ago, I would have been like, come on, Dan. But my guess is the Seahawks for a couple of reasons. One, $40 million cap hit for a team that is contending every single year is a lot. And then let's just play it out. Let's say it's the Raiders and Derek Carr's in the trade. So then it's $40 million for Russell Wilson in a dead cap hit, $25 million for Derek Carr. That's $65 million allocated to the quarterback position. That's a lot. The other thing is Pete Carroll is 70 years old.
Yeah.
He does not want to rebuild. So if you're trading Russell Wilson, and you told me you wanted to start the dynasty again and rebuild, I'd say, cool. That actually would make some sense. Pete Carroll doesn't want to do that. A trade doesn't make sense for any party.
How did we get to this point with Seattle?
Well, I think it was slowly building probably from like week 8 or 9 when Seattle's offense went from letting Russ cook to whatever it was we saw at the end of the year. He started turning it over. They kind of started focusing on running the ball to stop him from turning it over and go back to the brand of football that had made Seattle famous. And I don't think Russell Wilson liked that. He wanted to cook. He wanted to get the MVP votes. He wanted to be the kind of superstar quarterback that he is and that we see other quarterbacks like Aaron Rodgers. The Packers run the ball with Aaron Rodgers, but Rodgers is the star. The running game is not the star, right? And that was a philosophical difference in the fact that they had to play the season out and it didn't kind of get resolved during the season, only led to this little, kind of mini war of words or whatever you'd call it. Now, he was involved in the picking of the offensive coordinator. That was good. But they still got a lot of work to do to kind of get everyone on the same page here.
But when he came on the show a couple of weeks ago, you've been around Russ. He doesn't open the door and really answer things honestly. And, everything is go Hawks, and he wants to tell you all the things that he thinks you want to hear. He opened the door for me. I don't know if it was off of going to the Super Bowl. He looked miserable. He's watching Mahomes and Brady and going, why am I not playing in another Super Bowl? But do you think that it was orchestrated on his part to allow me to ask those questions?
I wondered about that. It was an eye-opening interview. I will say that. Like when I think I first saw the clips on Twitter and I'm like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
I had to go and kind of click, which, obviously for you, like you're doing an interview and someone has to go from Twitter to be like, all right, where can I find this? That's a great interview. I thought the whole thing was eye-opening. I started to get a sense before the Super Bowl that something was happening. Like I got wind of teams calling the Seahawks about Russell, and I reported it on our pregame show before the Super Bowl. And usually you report something like that and you get a lot of pushback. Don't say anything. Don't stir it up. We don't need that out there. I didn't quite get that. It was more like, well, it's true. So you happen to find out about it. Like, okay. And that was interesting to me. And then he kind of goes on this media tour for Man of the Year, goes on your show and a couple others. And he doesn't shy away from the fact that he's frustrated. He doesn't like to get hit, which I don't either. I get it. I think it's time where he's like, you know what? I'm taking ownership of myself, my career, my team. I want this to get better. And in a way, I don't blame him, but it just makes it a little messy when that happens.
But if you're Seattle, do you reach out to the Bears, the Cowboys, the Saints, the Raiders? The door's open.
Yeah, the door is open. But, I mean, the reality is you have Russell Wilson. If you want to trade him, you could trade him in like 2 seconds, right? Like everybody would want Russell Wilson. That's not the problem. Trading him is easy. You could get 3 1s, 2 1s, and a great player and another good player. Like you could get a great package for Russell Wilson. That's easy. John Schneider is the master. He could do it in 2 phone calls.
Yeah.
The problem is, who do you replace him with? And I think that's the problem for everyone. Like, let's say like the Houston Texans. I don't think they're trading Deshaun Watson, but let's say they do. Fine. You get a lot of draft picks. Who is actually your quarterback? For Seattle, you trade Russell Wilson, unless you're taking someone of his caliber and putting him in there, you are automatically rebuilding. So how does that actually benefit the Seahawks? That's the real question.
And I can't help but think of Jerry Jones today or yesterday when he saw this list that came out. And Jerry loves shiny new objects. And it gives him a little leverage, I guess, with Dak Prescott, whether he uses that or not. Like the feasibility of the Cowboys kicking the tires on Russell Wilson is what?
Not very feasible.
Okay.
To me, the Cowboys situation is very, very easy. Sign Dak Prescott. He is one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. He actually got more valuable when he hurt his ankle because the team was not good. Like, it's crazy to me. It's always been crazy to me when I saw people argue that Carson Wentz was better than Dak Prescott. It's almost like, what am I watching, right? Like, to me, it was obvious that Dak was where he was and Carson was going the wrong way, which I think has been pretty clear now. But it'd always be like, what are people saying? Like, how are they missing this? And I kind of feel like that with Dak too. Like, he's a rising young quarterback who's actually getting better. He's a great person. Rehab's going well. It's going to be expensive to sign him because, it's expensive to sign quarterbacks, but the price is only going up. And I'll say this, let's just say, God forbid, the Cowboys don't sign Dak Prescott by March 9th when they tag him or by July 15th. He'll be a free agent next year. He will make all of the money. And by then it's possible he leaves the Cowboys. And again, how does that benefit Dallas?
Talking to Ian Rapoport, the NFL Network insider. Did Deshaun Watson have a face-to-face with his coach or a phone call with David Culley?
It was not face-to-face.
Okay.
It was either a phone call or could have been Zoom. Could have been FaceTime, could have been Skype. There's a lot of different. I don't think it was rotary phone, but it was either phone call or some sort of face-to-face interaction type deal. It didn't sound like it was much. Deshaun Watson, from what I understand, always planned to do this out of respect for David Culley, who at 65 years old basically got his lifetime dream of being a head coach in the NFL. I never thought it would change anything, and it hasn't changed anything. He's where he is. The Texans are where they are. And if they trade him, which I got my doubts right now, it's not going to be anytime soon.
Yeah, I wondered. I thought Carson Wentz would eventually get traded. I didn't think Deshaun Watson would get traded. But here's Wentz, who wanted out of Philadelphia and got traded. And Deshaun Watson wants out. But I also wonder about the timing of this, Ian, because at some point these teams will move on and go, all right, if he's not available, then we'll look at free agents or we'll look at the draft. If I'm the Texans, I just say we're open for business like the Lions did with Matthew Stafford. Come on down, give us your best offer, and we'll move forward. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does if you're the Texans and you're okay not having Deshaun Watson. Like, he's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. And even though there's this sort of business/personal thing going on, he is a great person, high character quarterback, right? So why would you ever want to trade him? Like, whatever price they could give, unless it's the Jaguars or like maybe the Jets in some sort of package, maybe, replacing Deshaun Watson is hard or impossible unless you hit the lottery, which they already did with Watson. The timing is really interesting because usually you say, all right, like what's the deadline? All right, we need to know by free agency. All right, we need to know by the draft. Deshaun Watson is so good and so valuable that he actually doesn't, where he is in the market doesn't matter. Like, they could say in July 25th or something, okay, fine, we'll trade him. And you would have teams ready to offer multiple first-round picks for one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. Like, I don't think the market affects his value if the Texans ever decided to trade him.
I just don't understand what happened. He had that emotional press conference. He was crying. He thanked everybody. This was great. What did he find out? I know that, you trade Hopkins, but they had traded Hopkins. Then he got his contract extension, I think. So what did he all of a sudden realize that made him go, this is not the place I want to be?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you have a problem with the owner, that is tough to overcome. And it's all in a weird situation, right? Because you have Nick Caserio, a GM, in there. You have David Culley, the head coach. Watson doesn't have a problem with either of them. And so they have been trying to kind of make it right. But what's unfortunate is at this point, there has not been anything they could do to change his mind because they're not even involved. It's the owner. It's the owner promising, you know, trading his best receiver without telling him. He found out on Twitter. And then saying he would be involved in the process of hiring the GM. Just be involved. Like, just let him know, maybe talk to some people. And then he finds out on Twitter. I think that's something that to him has been really hard to overcome. And I've talked to people on all sides of this. I honestly don't know what fixes this.
I thought Drew Brees was going to take this week to have his going away party. Like, he had the week to himself. Very quiet with Drew Brees. What do you think?
Well, today's not over yet. Now, usually you'd say you wouldn't want to do it on Friday because the Saturday papers, but I mean, papers are so, I don't know if people think like that anymore. Could be today. He's retiring. Drew Brees is retiring. He's going to have an awesome job in our world next year. He's going to make a lot of money.
Are you guaranteeing Drew Brees is retiring?
Yes, he's retiring. And the reason I know that is because, one, he's retiring. But two, they took his salary. They took it all the way down to the minimum. Drew Brees is not going to play for $1 million next year. He's not going to play for the veteran minimum. He's also just not going to play. So, maybe he's waiting for his time. Maybe he wanted to kind of let it breathe a little bit. I don't know, but he is retiring.
Good to talk to you, Ian. Have a good weekend. We appreciate your time as always.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, man. Take care.
That's Ian Rapoport, NFL Network insider.